Hey guys, what's going on? Wayne here. So look, a couple weeks back, we were at the World of Concrete show in Las Vegas, stopped by the Cat booth to say hello to a lot of my friends there, and obviously as well to see all of the equipment that they had at the booth. And while Caterpillar is saving up most of its machine announcements that are going to occur this year for the big Con Expo show coming up here in just a month, which is kind of crazy to think about. So we will have full coverage of everything Caterpillar has to share there. So at World of Concrete, it was a little bit more chill. But they still had an interesting story to tell, and it got the attention of a lot of the showgoers as they milled around that booth. So the news that Caterpillar had to share at World of Concrete is the fact that they have made the decision to bring back their side shift backhoe models to North America. Now, these models include the 428, the 432, and the 434. Now, you can basically think of these three models as the rest of the world's version of the backhoe. It's almost like we're living in two different backhoe realities, a multiverse of backhoes. Sorry. Now, look, a lot of you might be familiar with the side shift backhoe. You're brushed up on your equipment history. You've been doing this a long time. Or you just kind of are aware of what's going on across the pond and the types of machines and everything that they're used. Or you could be like me and relatively in the dark about these machines. I had seen them before. I had not studied up on them a whole lot because it's not extremely relevant to North America until now. So that's what we're going to talk about here in this video. Why is Cat bringing these models back to North America? Why should you maybe consider purchasing one? What it might be good for? And we're also going to look at why the side shift backhoe returning to North America right now is pretty indicative of the overall backhoe market at large. All right, so to start off, we're going to try to answer the question of or questions of where the side shift backhoe came from and why you don't see them very much here in or at all here in North America. And really, the answer to both questions is the same. And we're going to have to start with really the history of the backhoe in general, which really I mentioned before the multiverse of backhoes, but it's because the history of the backhoe is really split right down the middle. And that's because the idea of the backhoe was happening right around the same time in both the United States and in the UK. The Wain-Roy Corporation is said to have manufactured the very first backhoes in the late 40s. What's important for this discussion is the fact that JCB introduced its very first backhoe to Europe. This is the first European backhoe. They introduced that in 1953. And it would be 4 years later in 1957 that Case would introduce the very first factory warranted backhoe to the United States. And no matter if you were looking at the very first backhoes in Europe or the very first backhoes over here in North America, those very early models pretty much had the same idea when it came to how to put the backhoe implement onto the back of the tractor that they were trying to use it with. Essentially, you mounted it in the center of the tractor frame, and from that center pivot, the boom can actually move left or right or swing left and right. Now, that sounds familiar and given because that's exactly how backhoes work to this very day here in the United States. But early in the life of the European backhoe, things diverged significantly in terms of the design. And that's because in the 1960s, not even probably 10 years after the very first model was released in Europe, JCB introduced its side shift feature. And what was different about this side shift feature is instead of mounting the backhoe implement right to the center of the rear of the machine, JCB's idea was to put a frame on the back of the tractor and allow the entire backhoe to shift side to side while still maintaining its ability to pivot left and right. And a lot of the reason they wanted to do that was to give backhoe operators more speed and efficiency in tight spaces. And we're going to stop right here because one of the very first questions that a lot of folks ask and especially at World of Concrete, as they were coming through the booth, one of the very first questions that people who are not familiar with this machine or this design of the backhoe asked is, okay, so it slides back and forth. So how does that work? Do I have to get out of the cab and actually slide it back and forth and lock it back in? Well, on these new Caterpillar models, the 428, the 432, and the 434, the answer is no. You can do it all from within the cab with the touch of a button. With that single touch of a button, you can actually move the backhoe along the carrier frame left and right. Now, another kind of striking difference as you're looking at one of these side shift backhoes in person is the fact that the design of the stabilizers between a side shift backhoe and a center pivot backhoe is different. Now, unlike a center pivot machine where you basically have the stabilizers, they're extending from the side of the frame almost in a triangle. They extend down diagonally and outside of the footprint of the machine or outside of those rear tires. Now, on a side shift machine, instead of going diagonally and out to the sides, these stabilizers actually stay within the footprint of those two rear tires, and they only extend down from the machine. This really caught on in a big way in the UK and in Europe in the 1960s, not long after JCB introduced it. Now, that affinity for that design quickly spread throughout the world, pretty much everywhere but here in North America and our friends to the south in South America. In fact, Matt Cartwright of Caterpillar tells me that between 70 and 75% of total backhoe sales around the world are this side shift backhoe design. All right, so if this side shift design is so amazing and it accounts for nearly 3/4 of the world's backhoe sales, why isn't it being used here in North America? Well, JCB tried. So when JCB first entered the US market in the 1970s, it brought its regular side shift backhoe design with it. It brought the backhoe that was selling so well in the UK and in Europe, it brought it over here to the United States. But customers kind of balked. They didn't like it. By that point, customers were so accustomed to the center pivot design of a backhoe that when JCB brought over this weird European machine, customers over here really wanted no part of it. So JCB did what any reasonable company would do. They said, okay, well, in the US, we get rid of the side shift design and we sell center pivot machines like everybody else. So the side shift backhoe stayed in Europe and honestly spread to the rest of the world. While here in North America, we stayed with our center pivot machine, and it's been that way ever since. Now, for a while, Caterpillar did sell side shift machines here, but for the same reasons that JCB had difficulty, it didn't work out. So they consolidated back down to the center pivot machine that everyone knows and loves here. So then the question becomes, if the preference here among North American contractors has long been put to bed, like 50 years hence, why is Caterpillar trying again? Why are they bringing these side shift machines back to the United States and to Canada? And the answer to that question is very closely tied to where the backhoe as a machine category finds itself right now in 2023. To put it bluntly, over the last 10 to 15 years, the backhoe market has contracted considerably as more and more customers ditch the machine in favor of a compact excavator or the combination of a compact excavator with a skid steer or a compact track loader. Now, obviously, compact excavators, skid steers, CTLs, really compact machines, rental machines in general, are kind of in a renaissance period, if you want to call it that. Like, they are experiencing growth like these categories have never seen before. And a lot of that has to do with some of the reasons that we're going to talk about. And really that includes their assortment of attachments, right? They're Swiss Army knives. You can do anything with them and you can take them anywhere. That is really the kind of key of what we want to zoom in on here. Because not only are these machines small enough to get into tight spaces, you can transport them really, really easily. Trailering them is no problem. You don't have to have a CDL for a lot of these machines. So it really takes a lot of the cost out of the situation and a lot of the hassle too. And at the end of the day, when you buy these machines, you don't buy them for a single purpose. You're purchasing a machine that can do just about anything, and even more as time goes on. But the size aspect here is key, because tight job sites and narrow streets, those have been the reality in Europe for European contractors for a while now. But here in the United States, here in North America, that is a fairly new reality to a lot of the people doing work in this country. Here in North America, urban and suburban areas are experiencing extreme growth. Urban areas are growing like never before. Suburban areas, the houses are getting closer and closer together as more and more people move to cities and in and around cities. And because of that, as the boundaries of the job site get smaller, more and more contractors are finding the need to get their machines into tighter spaces or into smaller spaces along the side of roadways. And the prime victim in this new enclosed reality for operators is the backhoe. That skid steer and CTL and compact excavator combo that we mentioned earlier, it's just a lot more versatile and you're able to get into those spaces a lot easier. And this position that the backhoe market finds itself in right now, that's precisely why Caterpillar is bringing the side shift backhoe to North America. The side shift backhoe is optimized for working in tight spaces. That's why European customers have long preferred it. So take a look. Because you can shift the pivot point on a side shift backhoe, and because the stabilizers fit within the tractor's footprint, you can position the backhoe to dig holes or trenches right up against walls. It's pretty incredible that you can get a machine of this size this close to a wall. It also allows you to position your backhoe right alongside trucks. So this would allow you to kind of like shift your backhoe implement, dig a hole or trench on one side of your machine, and then immediately swing that load over to the truck and dump it. Plus, transporting and roading a side shift backhoe is easier thanks to the fact that the boom and the stick not only fold in, they tuck away by folding back within the width of the machine, and that allows for travel on tighter roads and at higher travel speeds because you don't have the entire implement kind of like wagging behind you. Now, the tuck away aspect also means it's easier to move the machine around on a tight job site without worrying so much about hitting obstacles, people, or other machines, again, with that kind of tail wagging behind you. So again, tight spaces, right? Versatility. Those are really the kind of the main value propositions that side shift backhoes bring to the table. However, there's a lot of people out there that are going to look at this machine. They're going to see the fact that the stabilizers don't extend out very wide, and they're immediately going to be skeptical of this machine's stability and its lifting power. And look, the physics don't lie here. If you are able to establish a wider base at the rear of the machine like you are with a center pivot machine, you are going to have more stability. And because these center pivot machines have more stability, they also have more consistent and higher lift ratings throughout the swing of the backhoe. However, if you speak to the engineers behind the companies that offer these side shift backhoes, if you speak to folks at JCB, if you speak to folks at Caterpillar, one of the main things that they'll tell you is the fact that the questions around stability and the increased stability, the increased lifting power, a lot of times that gets overstated. I mean, for starters, the side shift backhoe, it is going to move around a little bit more in terms, like you do lose kind of basic stability, but not to an unsafe degree and not to the degree that you can't use it in certain situations like on slopes. You can still use these machines on slopes because the stabilizers move independently of one another. But this is the other really interesting aspect of the side shift machine. If you stop and really think about the stability issue, right? Well, what's one thing that you could do to increase the stability in a particular situation? Now, obviously the stabilizers, they're not moving. They can go up and down, but they're firmly planted where they're going to be. You can't extend them. But what is the thing that you can move? Well, you can move that backhoe pivot left or right. So let's say you've got the machine here and you've got your backhoe assembly right in the middle of the footprint of the machine. And let's say that you want to dig to the right of the machine. This is my right. You would move the backhoe implement to the left. And if you dig from the left across the body of the machine, now you've got a really wide base of stability between the king post on the backhoe and that right foot of the stabilizer. So you are going to lose some stability in a lot of situations, but in those situations where you can actually fix it by moving the machine to all the way to one side or the pivot all the way to one side or the other, you can address this problem to gain more stability. Now, to begin with, the company is going to be offering 3 of its side shift models over here. Now, these machines are built in the UK, just like the rest of the Caterpillar backhoe lineup. So they're not made in a different place, even though they are side shift models. They're made in the same factory as the Cat backhoes that you can purchase right now. But the 428 and the 432, those are basically just side shift versions of the 416 and the 420XE. 428 is the side shift version of the 416. The 432 is the side shift version of the 420XE. And that 432 actually includes all the bells and whistles of the 420XE. And then finally, we have the 434, and this one is definitely a little bit different. The 434, as you can tell, is different in that it's an equal size tire machine. And that's because, as you can see, the front tires and wheels are the exact same size of those in the rear. And beyond just being a cooler looking backhoe, the 434's equal tires are really for those situations where if you find yourself in muddy conditions a lot, they give you better traction. And if you find yourself roading a lot, they give you a better ride when you're roading this machine. But they also give you better maneuverability around the job site thanks to 4-wheel steer. All right, guys, well, that is it on the new 428, 432, and 430, well, not really new, just new to you. 428, 432, and 434 backhoes being reintroduced here in North America by Caterpillar. Be sure to check them out on cat.com. Maybe one of your local dealers actually has one so you can see one of these things in person. I would definitely recommend that. It's a very cool machine to kind of, and if you can actually demo one of these machines and hop inside one of them, even better. Contact your local cat dealer to see if you can get more information on that. And be sure to check these machines out right here on ironpros.com, where you can check and compare specs. You can watch videos like this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and a whole lot more. Check us out on ironpros.com. Thanks guys for watching. We always appreciate it. See you in the next one.